that introduction. Feels kind of weird being a high school kid, I'm not gonna lie, but we'll see how it goes. So today I'm really gonna be speaking to you guys. You mentioned I am from Colombia, and our story of how we got here. He knew where we lived. He knew what time my brother went to swim practice. He knew every move we made and was not afraid to come after. Growing up in Medellin, Colombia has its fond memories. A city nicknamed after its eternal spring, never ceased to amaze with its beauty. And its people, me included, exuberant, kind, and ever so genuine. But like a lot of Colombia, it has its dark past. Beginning in the 80s, cocaine trafficking became one of the top jobs for many people in Colombia. As we know, this is very illegal and not okay. But by 1983, Colombia's top export was no longer coffee, it was cocaine. Names like Pablo Escobar soon rose to power, and the city with exuberant people was now tainted with the bloodshed of its terrors. Ambition, power, and fear now ran the country. Our life was really simple. I remember going to museums and parks. We liked to visit people in shelters, orphanages, and everything in between. My favorite hobby was going to a big pirate ship in a mall. I don't think it's as big as I remember, but I think it was huge. And it had endless possibilities, something my 6-year-old mind absolutely loved. My mom and dad ran an appraising business, so they would go into houses and value them, and they would team up with national banks to go in and help them sell the houses. Looking back, I had a very comfortable life. We lived in a very nice apartment, had a housekeeper, which seems kind of silly because we were in an apartment, but we did. And we had a very comfortable life. But as I began to grow older, I began to learn more about the real fear that we lived in constantly. Daily bombings, weekly shootings, and forever knowing if our family was going to be safe. There was no going out late into certain parts of town in fear that we would die that night. There was no peace until the bomb of the day was heard, and then it was okay to go out. And for us, for sure, there was certainly no peace after a phone call we received. The business my parents built was a business they absolutely adored. My dad was an architect, very well awarded architect, and my mom was a fervent businesswoman. It was a business they loved. But then everything changed. My dad had the job to go out into each house and value the house. A lot of the parts he went into were very tough neighborhoods, but he was safe for the most part. But it so happened that one of the houses he went into was of an elderly woman. Now that doesn't sound very threatening, but we received a phone call, and the person on the phone knew everything about us. He knew, like I said, my brother's schedule, where we went to school, and he wanted to kill my brother and my dad. Now, the man across the phone was the mother of the elderly woman whose house had been taken by the bank. And the man across the phone was also a member of one of the biggest cartels in Medellin, Colombia. I didn't notice it until really I was older. I'm 18 years old right now, and this happened when I was 6. So I didn't realize what was going on when my dad moved from our city for a month and went to hide out with my brother. My brother at the time was 9. He's now 24. It was difficult. My dad was one of the most involved dads in this world. If you wanted to go to the park, he was going to go to the park with you. Okay? He did everything. And for him not being able to be seen with us was incredibly painful. It wasn't long before the police and investigation forces were in and were able to track down the caller. And that's where everything really began. Months passed, and the situation did not seem to alleviate itself. We tried to do everything in our power, but not being able to be seen with my dad was not a life my parents were willing to live. Our only resort, leave the country. Sure enough, in 2002, my dad moved to Alabama seeking political asylum. They told us it would only be a matter of months before we would see him again, but if any of you know immigration, a couple of months is a couple of years. Endless times where we would have to go and get medicals taken, and they would say, "That's not the doctor we had on the list," yet it was right on the list in front of them, and going back and paying and forever a pending request on whether we can move to the United States or not. My mom became a single mother for 2.5 years, and in those 2.5 years, we moved over 5 times. My biggest memory, moving to a place that had about 4 pools. They were pretty awesome. Yeah, that's my biggest memory, but it was very difficult, as you can imagine, for my parents. After 2 years, I couldn't believe it was him standing right in front of me, my very own dad at the Atlanta airport. Keep in mind, I was 6 years old, and my mind couldn't comprehend what was really going on, so later that night in my diary, I wrote, "I don't really think this is my dad. He's really skinny and doesn't have a beard." I moved to the US in August of 2004 and began school at Vestavia Hills Elementary East. Now imagine becoming suddenly deaf and mute at the age of 6. This is exactly what it felt like moving to a foreign country and not knowing the language. The one thing I did know that my parents taught me was, may I use the restroom, a very crucial element to being an elementary school kid. Ideally, moving to the United States would solve our problems. We were safe now, at least physically. The problem was, our lives would radically change in every sense of the word. We quickly and unexpectedly changed everything. We went from having a comfortable life to having 0. We went from having a housekeeper to my mom doing the jobs of a housekeeper. You see, the United States was a place for safety, but not necessarily for normality. My parents, who were both successful business owners, now had to clean offices, restrooms, work in everything in between that they could, work in construction. And to this day, sometimes they have to resort to those, even 11 years later. This was not only true for my parents, but also for some of my family that moved here 2 years prior that are actually in the audience today. Like the stories of many immigrants, leaving your country isn't just leaving your belongings. It's leaving who you are. It's leaving your entire college career that you worked for. It's leaving your identity. Imagine some of you doing this right now. Most of you are in college. And in a couple of years, you're told you're moving to a different country, that you don't speak the language, and your college is worth nothing. All gone to waste. But that's precisely what makes the story of immigrants so incredible, making something of absolutely nothing. It's what our lives have been challenged by these past 11 years. Going through the phases of my parents being unemployed, having to get food stamps, and constantly awaiting whether we were going to be okay. Persevering through the most difficult times when there's a greater outcome in the end. I can't say I know what my parents went through or what anyone else has gone through, but I know this. Power is believing, and believing is power. Power in believing that whatever you do, even small, is going to change someone else's life, much like my parents changed mine. Power in believing that the word impossible has I'm possible in it. At the age of 6, I was put in this English as a second language program, a program that people that weren't born in the United States are put in to learn English. The predicted time was over 2 years. I set myself a goal, and out of 4 months, I was done with the program. You have to believe the power that you have, even though it may be insignificant, it's going to change the world some way. It can be small, or it can be as big as you want. Power in believing that anything is possible if you set your mind to it, such as launching your own magazine, in the second semester in your high school career, and do a TED Talk and still try to graduate. Power in believing that the efforts you make will soon change this world. Believe in the power of good, and believe in the power of change. As an immigrant, change came very quickly and very unexpectedly. But the change that brought hardships, so many days, made a person who can now stand in front of you, unafraid of the future, and very unashamed of her past. Thank you.